Hello, I'm Dr. Kelsie Nabben, and this is my colleague Matta from the Red Guild. I'm from RMIT University and have contributed to SEAL in various initiatives via my role as an academic researcher of blockchain security, among other matters. So why this talk? First of all, I'm going to briefly run through some insights from my forthcoming book called Decentralized Digital Security, Code, Crisis, and Community. And these insights are about painting a broad landscape of blockchain security and some of the core dynamics based on embedded research with security communities for over 2 years. So we're taking a socio-technical perspective, which is looking at where the social and technical elements are inextricably linked and co-constitutive. And then we're going to switch to kind of a more Q&A mode where we can hear from an industry practitioner and SEAL Frameworks lead Matta. So insight number 1, blockchain security is characterized by a permanent state of insecurity. And this is not to say that traditional cybersecurity doesn't take this posture, but that there's a different dynamic in the level of responsibility that's shared across the ecosystem between protocol developers, users, and then these other various security actors that find themselves taking a position of response per se. So there's a quote in the book from Pascal, who's involved in SEAL 911, about how every single person has to be highly paranoid. Insight number 2, the security boundary has moved off-chain. So rather than just looking at the technical dynamics of cryptography and code, we've seen a significant increase in attacks and losses occurring through social engineering. We've seen the coercion, physical coercion and personal targeting. So 2025 was named the year of the wrench attack, and this increase in kind of organized crime and violence around cryptocurrency thefts as well. And then jurisdictional and geopolitical dynamics. So DPRK hacks, as well as money laundering stats, the highest ever in 2025. Insight number 3, security is maintained by informal coalitions of actors. So this is especially important where public-private dynamics and of security provision intersect, where there's not even recognition or not able to be sort of formalized reputation around who has authority to provide information, who is a legitimate white hat or acting as a white hat, which collectives need to be listened to by the entire ecosystem when they call for fund freezes or for validators to slow down or censor transactions and so on. And so at the moment, we're seeing a much more informal kind of governance by reputation and moral codes of conduct. For example, SEAL 911, we act ethically. And that lends itself to insight number 4. So legitimacy is undefined and contested, and we've seen in specific events, such as the $1.5 billion Bybit hack in February 2025, that there's not necessarily agreement about what it means to be a decentralized ecosystem, and kind of stakeholders found this line to argue, which is that it should be a principle of do no harm to others. So kind of a libertarian basis that undergirds security in this industry. And so that was seen specifically post Bybit hack, when the funds were being laundered, including through the protocol, the DeFi protocol Thorchain. There was many public calls on Twitter to apply social pressure to get the validators to slow down on processing those transactions. So there's a quote here from Yogi in 2025 that says, Thorchain just helped North Korea launder 605 million. No KYC, no off switch, no resistance. Lazarus Group jacked Bybit for 1.5 billion, then funneled the stolen ETH through Thorchain like it was built for them. Over 5 days, 2.91 billion in volume ripped through, 860 million in a single day, while Thorchain pocketed 3 million in fees. That's not innovation, that's negligence at best, greed at worst. And so it's about reputation and this social pressure to get people to behave in line with the broader interests of the space, rather than formal retribution or kind of jurisdictional authoritative action. And so what does this mean more broadly? Well, it's looking at the space also as an institutional design and governance problem, not just as, specific issues around, wallet UX or auditing or formal verification and so forth. So this is what blockchains are designed for, and to solve these problems of coordination, legitimacy, and incentives. But here we are also having to work as an ecosystem with initiatives like SEAL and others, creating these kind of coalitions and working on incentives, legal initiatives, and so forth. So now we're going to shift gears to some questions with Mata from Red Guild and SEAL Frameworks. Thank you, Mata.
Thanks for having me.
So to get us started, maybe just frame for the audience, what is the Red Guild and what are some examples of what you do?
Well, we're basically a small team that has been working the past 3 years solely on public goods, doing security as a public good for the Ethereum ecosystem. And it started as a way to explore the potential alternatives to the current schemes or business models that there are, like contests, bug hunting, security audit firms, or consultancy. At the beginning, what we did was focus on smart contracts. Like, I don't know, it was the obvious thing to do, but then we realized that that the smart contracts were a little bit more mature. I'm hesitant to say mature, but there were a lot of eyes already there, and we started to see like a change in the attacks that shifted from smart contracts to operational security, for example, or private keys. And that's when we pivoted and started to do more traditional security, if you want, and then started to deliver phishing awareness trainings, security awareness trainings in general, research, sharing all what we have found, and open sourced everything that we can. We initially started funded by the EF's ecosystem support program, but also landed some bounties that allow us to have a little bit more runway. And right now we are currently exploring with the Phishing Dojo. It's our first platform that does phishing awareness trainings through realistic simulations in safe environments. And
It's very difficult to get right. Harder than I thought it would be.
and I'm also a SEAL member, a proud SEAL member, as you said. We've been working closely with SEAL since its genesis. And now I'm currently leading the security frameworks, which are best practices. We're trying to use battle-tested practices from the ecosystem to the ecosystem. And paradoxically, people might think that this is one of the most profitable fields in tech, and I decided to work on 2 nonprofits.
And just to clarify, SEAL Frameworks is a publicly available GitHub repo of these best practices. Is that correct?
Yes, we have 2 sites. One that's what's being thoroughly reviewed on the frameworks.securityalliance.org domain, and on .dev we have the ongoing processes and reviewing.
Cool. And we'll get to your point about incentives and sustainability. But thinking about the last major incident that you were close to, where did the failure actually occur? Was it at the technical layer or around these more kind of social dynamics of coordination, incentives, and authority?
Well, the latest major I participated directly with was nationwide in Argentina. Pablo from OPSEC and I started researching separately some cases where users got their telegrams hijacked, and we didn't understand why. At first we thought it was just a failure in operational security, but then we realized that there was an SMS gateway provider from Argentina that was breached, and they were manning the middling short number codes. So every one-time password and 2FAs were being intercepted, and we see it using a lot with Mi Argentina, which is a government ID that you can have as an Argentinian, and also WhatsApp or banks, whatever. It was obvious where to look when we understood where was the problem, because I even reverse engineering the Telegram protocol in order to understand. But I have the sensation that the failure wasn't technical at all. It was more due to coordination and incentives of all the parts that were working there, even amongst Pablo and me. So the thing is that when we contacted and reached out to mobile carriers, these providers that they were in different layers, some of them ignored us, some of them denied what was happening. They threatened us. They even withheld information, and in one specific case, I was threatened until we showed tangible proof. So what happened is that no one wanted to be the first one to say, okay, I'm having this issue, because they didn't understand what was really happening, of if they were the actual problem. And nobody felt the responsibility to do so, to start to report and investigate. And there was no authority strong enough to make the others act. So the incidents weren't reported, and because they weren't reported, they were investigated, while users were getting hit. So the reach, yes, it mattered, but the real mess was how the response was, and that it all ended up depending on cloud and politics, and not in evidence, you know.
And was it resolved?
I don't think it was resolved. I think it was probably partially resolved, but we can't know for sure, because since nobody we tried to denounce to higher authorities, but they told us that some of these providers are the ones that need to denounce it themselves. So if nobody denounced, nobody understands what's or where to investigate. So I think this is an ongoing issue.
Okay, wow. So you mentioned in that story that provisioning security comes with risk, sometimes personal risk to you. That resonates with some of the SEAL initiatives, such as the White Hat Safe Harbor. And as a stakeholder landscape, you know, people operating as white hat hackers and some of the private security firms doing incident tracing are kind of critical infrastructure to blockchain security. But then they're incentivized like volunteers, whether that be retroactively or as you know, some have spoken about, for example, the SEAL 911 volunteers. You know, if you're the person who's been robbed or attacked, you're not really in a position to provide, you know, a bounty or whatever to the people that help you. So where do you see incentives breaking down, also in your own experience, like you say, working for not-for-profits and not necessarily having kind of guaranteed?
I think that it's when the white hat work stops being optional, but everyone treats it in an informal way. I mean, in practice, a white hat is always acting as critical infrastructure. The only thing is that they don't have authority, they don't have legal backup or real incentives. Let's set this scenario. Imagine that you see an exploit that it's imminent on chain. You're monitoring it. Do you act or do you wait? You know, that's what happens. So if you front run the attack, you most surely try to drain the entire protocol to avoid other bots lifting that up or providing visibility to other potential attackers, and to avoid that the original attacker steals the rest. But at that moment, you become the one who actually executed the exploit. So markets will probably panic, the token economics will probably be destroyed, and even if the funds are returned, the damage that you did with that is done. I mean, you could hold back, of course, alert maintainers, you maybe participate with the SEAL 911 ticket and help coordinate the war room. But in the meantime, while you wait for a fix, someone might also realize about that and exploit it. themselves. So the thing that happened is that both choices rely on a white hat to rely on incomplete information, and both of them have irreversible consequences. If you think about it, it's an insane position to be put in as a white hat or someone trying to discover funds, because everyone at that moment expects that you act responsibly, that you sometimes coordinate these disclosures, and also that you should delay the disclosing it for the greater good. But yet they have no real authority, there are no clear rewards, and most of the time they have no legal backing. So I feel like that it's like the ecosystem assumes, or silently assumes, that someone will take the risk and need the cost. So in our field specifically, it's not that an incident provides downtime for a protocol. Here, assets are gone forever. So when a system like this relies on volunteer sacrifice to manage this risk, then I understand that this incentive model will become a liability. That's why you mentioned safe harbor, which is super important. It allows, it's another initiative I see, it allows pre-authorized white hats to rescue funds from protocols while an active exploit. And there are also legal defense funds. And they matter because they turn this implicit expectation into an explicit one and have a defined supportive role.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I go into that in the book as well, about how the need to align incentives so people are incentivized to operate, as white hats. And there's this beautiful quote, I think it's from Pascal as well, of, there's a wolf in all of us, or there's a wolf in me. It's like, have the ability to also exploit these, but, like, show me why I shouldn't, to the point about, moral and ethical codes kind of binding people's behavior for the better. To this point about information, obviously information is actually not neutral, especially in the event of security-related matters. So in practice, how do formats, timing, and audiences of information shape sharing outcomes?
I think this is a tricky part of the whole security puzzle, because it's not what you communicate, but also to how, when, or to whom. And changing any one of those variables is going to determine and change attacker behavior, who's been defending, you can cause market reactions on more user harm. So in terms of format, it does really matter, because a super polished report or post-mortem or disclosure might signal that something is under control when it's probably not. And a casual chat or a tweet saying assets are fine might signal urgency. Then timing is key, because if you disclose too early, you might give attackers like a cheat sheet, a way to amplify their attacks. And if it's too late, you probably are going to lose user trust. And then the audience is critical. You can't use a one-size-fits-all message for everyone. What can reassure a user can also inform more an attacker or create more panic in the market. And to be honest, I always thought about incident response communication as an afterthought, like post-mortem, for example. But I come to understand that this is more like a defense mechanism, a defense system. And the goal of incident communication is to prevent that the information that we disclose causes more harm, especially to the users, once the technical fix is done. Because it doesn't end at the technical fix. There's more to do.
Right. And then, like you said before, sometimes the who matters as well, in terms of it's not enough to be matter from the Red Guild, depending on the stakeholder that you're trying to communicate with.
Definitely.
All right. 2 more questions, 2 minutes for the sake of time. So could you go a little bit more into one of the other tools that the Red Guild has released, the OPSEC Companion Pocketbook? And what was that? What was the on-ground reaction when you handed it out at a Web3 conference? Oh, there it is. Yeah, tell us what.
I think that It was basically merely a different way to portray information. We were trying to find new ways, creative ways to improve learning. And today we're a lot of time with screens, so I think that having something that provides insight, that it's not a screen, it's a good edge. But what surprised me most was that even technical folks were super thankful for this. And I think this highlights a critical point where we at, where the technology gap is so vast that even deeply technical folks can find information on something that I wrote in a weekend. I also understand that we need to find better and even more creative ways to spread awareness, especially since people only seek knowledge after an incident. And this is because humans default to output-based reasoning over risk-based reasoning. So yeah, and in the case of the regular and the activities that we do, for example, a security awareness campaign, we don't just wait for users to come to our workshops. We try to coerce them into participating by breaking them in a very fun and non-dangerous way.
So thinking ahead about designing for the next 5 years, if we assume incidents will become more cross-chain, more AI augmented, and more geopolitical, what coordination capability is most urgently lacking? And in designing this question, I was thinking about your recent blog post as it relates to the ITS initiative as well, which is linked in the slide here, the third link.
Well, I think that it's not technical. What we are looking for is an intentional or a proactive coordination. As you said, incidents are not becoming less complicated. There are a lot of they are multi-chain, poly-domain, and on-chain systems are tightly coupled. But when there's an incident, we fall back to improvisation. There's not a clear or shared operational language. There are no clear roles or disclosure paths as where to do. And sometimes the assumption that attackers are watching is omitted. And I don't think this is over with education or tooling. I think this is a shift that has to come from the structural part of it, and expecting that white hats or people that act as heroes or vigilantes, that's not the strategy. And I think that the reason that the Security Alliance exists is because there is a social coordination layer missing, and it tries to cover it, and it's doing it. I did a joke when I finished my presentation at the Trillion Security Initiative, saying that as long as security is a business, we need to destroy it. But I think it points to a truth. If we don't formalize this coordination at industry scale, and I mean with real resources, with support, the system will burn out the most dedicated people, and their exhaustion will be seen as a badge of honor instead of a warning sign.
All right, with that, we're out of time. Thank you to everyone for listening.